How I Got Here, the inside stories of startups and innovation in travel and transportation, with your hosts, PhocusWire's Kevin May and Mozio's David Litwak. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for How I Got Here, Mozio and PhocusWire's weekly podcast about innovators in travel and transportation. Today we have Paul Melhus, the founder and CEO of ToursByLocals, the world's leading provider of private tours and experiences, with 1,700 carefully selected tour guides in 130 countries around the world. Thanks for joining us today, Paul.
Nice to be here. Thanks. Nice to see you guys. Just wanted to make one quick correction about the number of tour guides. We're actually up over 4,700 now. So
my bad on that one. Well, so we like to start every one of these conversations the same way, which is for us to ask you how you got here.
Great. Sure. Well, the story actually starts in 2006. My partner and I, Dave Vincent, who's the technical fellow of ToursByLocals, took a trip to China, and on our last day we still hadn't visited the Great Wall, so we had a couple of options. One of them was to go to the close by section of the wall at Badaling, but that's kind of like the Disney version of the Great Wall. It's where everybody goes, lots of tour buses, packs of people. So we decided that we wanted a different experience, hired a driver to take us 2 hours out of Beijing to a place called Simitai, and that's more of an authentic version of the wall, hasn't been all fixed up. So as we're walking on to the to start our little visit, we passed a group of Chinese women, 2 of whom came after us and introduced themselves, and they spoke pretty good English, and we started interacting with them, and they actually ended up giving us a really good tour of the wall. And we not only that, we learned something about their lives and what it was like to be more. Actually, they were farmers in their regular job, and they just did this on the side. So of course there was always an undercurrent of why are they doing this, what's in it for them. And indeed, at the end of the tour, when we were ready to go to the airport, they brought out all of their books and their cards and all of the little tchotchkes that we didn't really have any interest in, but it kind of sets up an obligation. So we bought some stuff, and I think both of us left a little bit unsatisfied because we'd basically run out of Chinese cash because we were going to the airport, and we didn't have enough room for all of their stuff anyway. So, but that started a conversation between Dave and myself about how this could have been made a much better experience both for us and for them. And over the course of 2 years, we developed all the concepts, and we're in October of 2008, we're ready to launch ToursByLocals, and the rest of it is history, shall we say.
So thanks ever so much, Paul, for joining us. I really appreciate it. You did have some involvement in travel with your business prior to that, which was My Trip Journal.
Oh, so, sure, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. And I suppose the obvious thing to ask really is, what did you learn from that particular business that you then took into ToursByLocals, if anything, or did you learn so much that you would never take anything from that previous experience?
Well, certainly it had some, it's funny, that actually was just a kind of little side project for a friend of ours who was actually taking him and his wife and kids on a 2-month trip through China, as it turned out. So they used that to document their journey, and then after that, we basically, in conjunction with the fellow who was our friend and taking that China trip, developed My Trip Journal, which is kind of a blogging platform for people who travel. I don't know that we learned too much about that. It certainly was a benefit for us because it generated some cash, and it allowed us to have the luxury of not having to work while we, we're able to do my tours by locals.
Yeah.
But in terms of learning from that and travel, I think the idea for Tours by Locals was, it was a bit of hubris on my part that, we were basically trying to build a platform that would be, it's all about me, and how I wanted to, how I like to travel, how I want to interact with local people. And, it was based on the desires that I have as far as my preferred method of traveling. And we have maybe come up with some sort of post hoc justifications as to why that was why that was a good idea. But in 2006, we were just thinking, well, how would I like to do that? I don't want to carry around any cash, so I want to pay somebody else all of the money for the tour, and then they can deal with all of the mechanics of getting it to the guide, and I just want to show up and have my experience. So that led us to think that, well, we have to collect the money, hold it in trust, and then release it to the guide once the tour was successfully delivered. So there was all kinds of, anytime we came up with an idea or a situation, we just said, well, how am I as the traveler, what would be the best thing for me? And then that's basically how we developed it. And of course, but we did always keep in mind the interests of the guide. So we really do believe that we serve two customers, travelers and guides, and we try to make things good for the guide and also for the traveler, and keep those values at the forefront of everything that we do.
Now, it is a very much a kind of a classic tours and activities model, isn't it? It's that two-sided marketplace, but it's an awful long way from you having that experience in China going, wouldn't it be great, to creating something that's beyond a good idea, to getting some customers on both sides of the marketplace, because it is a two-sided marketplace, and then getting it to scale. So what were the steps, Paul, that you went through from this is a great idea, going on the airplane, starting to sketch out a business plan, all those kind of things, and to the point where, okay, this actually might work?
Sure. Well, I have to say that there was an incredible amount of luck that we had. First of all, having the financial wherewithal to not worry about, feeding ourselves for 2 years while we could, build out the product and first version ready to go. And then the starting it in October of 2008, because that was 1 month after Lehman Brothers basically crashed the world. Yeah. And so, when the world is kind of spiraling down, I think is a really great time to start a business. If I was starting a business from scratch now, would probably be a really good time to go, because we're in a crisis mode. But back in 2008, we realized that there was a kind of chicken and egg problem that we had. If you have no guides, why would travelers come to your website? And if you have no travelers, why would guides bother, spending any time talking to you? But in 2008 and basically through 2010, this was the Great Recession. People had the travel industry was seriously depressed, and all we had to do was focus on signing up guides. And that's basically what we did, knowing that, or hoping, I guess, that travel would come back at some time. And indeed, that's what happened. So during those 2008, 2009 till 2010, we were just focused on getting a critical mass of content on the website, enough tour guides, and it was fairly easy to sign people up. They were sitting around. In fact, the fellow who's the current president of ToursByLocals was a guide of ours in Argentina, is Luciano Bolorski. And yeah, he was playing online poker or something when one of our little ads popped up, and so we filled it out and became our first guide in Buenos Aires, and did a really great job there, and then eventually is now the president of the company. So
just before David, I know is going to jump in a second, but on that, you said you started recruiting, if that's the right word, your tour guides, even without perhaps any business to keep them busy because things were going badly wrong from a financial perspective in the industry. Yeah. How did you, and you'd only just launched, how did you convince them that this was something that, was it just essentially you were a directory for them at this stage and you were saying, when this is all over, everything's going to be great and you'll get lots of business?
Yeah, well, of course, we would come across as, we've got this great platform, we're going to bring you travelers and be a great source of business for you to run your tour guide business. And, even if they didn't think that there was much chance of that happening, there really wasn't a lot of downside. They were taking, maybe 5 or 6 hours to build out their profile, put up the tours that they wanted to sell on the website, and then, kind of we're open for business. But the fact that we didn't have any business wasn't such a big deal because they weren't getting any business from anywhere anyways,
Right. Okay.
We were sure, maybe it wouldn't amount to anything, but what's the downside? I've wasted 5 or 6 hours of my time putting up a profile. So it was pretty easy sell. But, well, maybe right now it's actually hard to recruit guides because I think everybody's a little bit shell-shocked. But pre-COVID, in 2019, we were it's not an easy task to get new people up on running because everybody's, the world economy was firing on all cylinders back in those days. Of course, the world, everything has completely shifted now. So, but, thinking about how things went from, 2008, 2009, where we were in the depths of the recession, we've been really, up until the end of 2019, it's been a pretty great ride for every economy or every segment of the economy, and certainly the travel industry has benefited enormously. And ToursByLocals, I think, was riding a really strong trend away from mass tourism and towards a more personal, customized experience. So because we've always been all about private tours.
So Paul, I want to interrupt you there and actually kind of expand a little bit on something you just said. You said move away from mass tourism, and so it's funny. So there was a point in time in which there was a lot of Airbnb for activities kind of startups kind of popping up and tours. And I remember hearing from one of my friends in the tours and activities world that actually most people just want the hop on, hop off bus. And that is kind of the dirty little secret of the industry. And, what was interesting is that I feel like the idea of the unique local experience is one of the travel industry's great false gods almost, where it's kind of like, everyone wants this graffiti tour in an alley or something like that it's really hard for them to get it. So I almost feel like my travel industry expertise makes me want to think that ToursByLocals is this really great idea that just isn't going to work, but it's a great idea that has worked, and you just raised a lot of money and have proven that wrong. And so I'm curious. I'd love to get your analysis about where is everyone kind of missing, the idea of how to get away from mass tourism, and how do you do that? Because I think a lot of people have tried to do what you did and failed.
Yeah, there's certainly, we noticed, companies popping up all over the place, and then they kind of disappear fairly quickly. And so, yeah, we have been successful. I mean, we started we've been self-financed for up until December 24th. Our timing was impeccable in terms of raising venture capital for sure, but we were able to kind of self-fund. Right, Dave and I kicked in maybe $250,000, and that was just mostly so we could eat, and the business has funded itself right from the get-go, and we've been able to generate growth of 40% or so per year right from I guess up and starting in 2010. There was some time when we were not we were starting to doubt ourselves, but we and I actually credit Dave on having the courage to start spending money on Google pay-per-click advertising and buying our own private tour and making sure that we were in the top 3. That seemed to kind of launch us on a nice growth curve, and of course all the other stuff that you need to do in order to be successful. But we've been relentlessly focused on private tours everywhere people travel. All of our principles about the guide is the guide. You pay in advance, so there's no cash on the day, which actually is considered to be, well, there's psychological validation that creates a better experience when there's a big distance between when you pay for something and when you actually consume it. You're more likely to enjoy the experience than when you get on a hop-on, hop-off bus, because you have to pay cash in the moment, sort of thing. So, so that's part of it, and just kind of sticking to our basic principles, and it seems to work. I mean, when we went through, the due diligence with the venture capitalists, of course, they did a market study and talked to our travelers, and we came in with a net promoter score of 79, which is pretty much off the charts as far as as for customers, So yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I to David's point about it's this kind of mass tourism product, and the what you provide, which is very, very focused. It's specialized. It's personalized. You've probably known Luke Elzinger, who's the CEO of Tickets, and he always puts it really. Luke's a great guy. I mean, we should probably get him on the podcast at some point. But he always puts this very succinctly. He said, yes, people want to go and do a culinary tour of the east side of the river in Paris, but when they're there, they still want to climb the Eiffel Tower. These two things can coexist. You can be cool, but you can still go and do all these mass market things. So my question really is, have you ever been tempted just because the unit economics are often better if you are part of it as well, just to kind of bolster some of the other things that you do? Has there ever been that temptation?
Some people have suggested that we should branch out, but we've kept our relentless focus just on private tours, and not been seduced by anything else. So, but you do make a good point, and I think a lot our tours are kind of first-time visitors tour of Paris. So you do see the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower and all of those kind of things. But all of our guides, and this is something that we talk to them about, is they need to have some kind of unique experiences, in their back pocket that is, they read the group, and then so they've always got that little secret thing that kind of gives the aha moment that you're not expecting, and I think that's part of the success of Tours by Locals, is that we always offer that kind of aha moment, as well as the things that everybody wants to see in Paris. So
yeah, and so take us back again, if you can, Paul, to the conceptual side of it. How did you decide on a business model? How did you kind of come up with the way you were going to kind of organize this two-sided marketplace from an economics perspective?
Well, we certainly spent time talking to tour guides about what they thought was reasonable in terms of the revenue share that, if the tour is going to cost $100, how much goes to the platform and how much goes to the guide. And we settled on a kind of 80-20 split. So, the majority of the revenue does go to the guide, and out of the 20% that is for Tours by Locals, we pay the credit card fees and all of that sort of thing. So we are a pretty low margin business, so we do need to be very conscious of cost and customer acquisition, and but basically I think we got through a lot of it just by keeping our eye really on the interests and needs of the customer and getting them to be kind of brand advocates for us, and telling their friends essentially. So but these are all still basic problems for any business. How do you acquire customers at an economic cost? When the pandemic hit, and basically we stopped all of our pay-per-click advertising, and then we thought, oh, let's just kind of that was pretty outrageous, because I just don't believe that there was in a real auction that there was other people that were willing to bid us up to $6 a click. So we quickly put a lot of caps on how much we're willing to pay to make Google even wealthier than they are. So,
yeah, and just on the commission element of the story, I mean, has that changed much over the years as you've seen competition come and fleetingly go? It seems there have been, as you were discussing with David a moment ago, there has been a brands arrive and then disappear fairly quickly. But did you have to alter your commission level at all to kind of the competition, or to just kind of strengthen your relationship with the guides, or has it remained consistent?
It's been consistently that 80-20 split. We have never changed it. I do have this idea that we need to figure out how to do a better job of monetizing the business. So we might need to look at some kind of service fee on the same lines of Airbnb. They tack on 10%, but we want to do that in a Tours by Locals way. Maybe one of the things that we've learned from the COVID thing is that you need to be very flexible on the cancellation side of things. And I think I'm really happy that we were able to get out front of the industry in terms of offering cancellations to customers. Like we just said, we're going to give everybody a refund that wants it. And we actually did give them the choice. They could take a full refund, or the amount they paid plus 10% as a promo code. And about 20% of customers took us up on that. The other 80% wanted their cash. And we were really fortunate to be, first of all, to have the financial wherewithal to make those kind of refunds, because I think a lot of companies probably wouldn't be able to do that. But I think it's earned us an enormous amount of goodwill that will serve us in the future going forward. Right now, we basically, our message is book and cancel anytime. And, that's the only way that people are going to be willing to risk booking a tour if they know that they can cancel. But, our history kind of serves us well, because, we already walked that walk and gave everybody that needed to have a refund. So I'm very happy we were able to do that.
So it's interesting. I mean, the story that we wrote in January 13 this year, Tours by Locals survives a decade of bootstrapping, raises 33 million to accelerate growth, written by my colleague Stephen. And the headline says it all. You did a year of bootstrapping, and then all of a sudden you've raised big money.
Oh,
So
yeah.
talk us through, if you can, Paul, the process by which, I'm guessing early 2019, mid 2019, you suddenly thought, okay, let's try and raise a lot of money. There's some money kind of swilling around in tours and activities. It's still seen as the hot sector. Was that the thinking, that you should just kind of see some of the cash that was swilling about, or was there something else, or was it a number of things?
Well, yeah, of course, it was such a different world back in 2019. But basically, yes, you're quite right. Tours and activities seemed like the last bit of the travel industry that was where money was flowing, because airfares and hotels, that was a done deal. So now the third part of the market, and really the reason why people travel is tours and activities. So there was a lot of money floating about in that for that sector, and we were every week I would get a kind of over the transom request from a different venture capitalist asking about what our plan is, can we talk? And so we actually we talked to a lot of venture capitalists because it just seemed like to me it seemed like the right time. We've been kind of, as you say, the headline is very correct. We were bootstrapping, but I think we got it to a point where it just seemed like there was, we created this value. We didn't have any money in our own pockets because we're constantly reinvesting in, to keep up with the growth for next year. So we'd be opening new offices, hiring people. We never really showed a lot of profit. More or less kind of a break-even scenario. My thesis is that you can either grow really fast or you can be profitable, but you can't really do both of them at the same time, right, generally speaking. So we had always focused on growth, and it seemed to me by the time 2019 rolled around that it was time for us to take a little bit of money off the table, because everything for myself and Dave and actually Luciano is an equal partner in the company as well. It was time for us to take a bit of money into our own pockets, a de-risking strategy, if you will. But we also could see that we were nowhere near realizing what the potential of ToursByLocals could become, and it seemed prudent that we should look for some investment to kind of guarantee that 40% growth, because it's one thing to grow when you're giving 1,000 tours a year, but we were up in the 120,000 individual tours per year range in 2019. And how do you grow beyond that? Well, you need to be able to hire really smart people, much smarter than I am, about how to manage that growth, and marketing and systems. And we had taken a lot of shortcuts on the kind of back end systems that underpin ToursByLocals, and we needed to be able to invest in those. So I could just see that there was a lot of things that we needed to do if we wanted to kind of keep that growth trajectory going. Because I still believe, of course, everything changed, but back in those days, and we were still not really capturing a huge percentage of the market. Seemed like there was still lots more potential for the company to grow our sales, and we just would need the resources to be able to do that.
I find this particularly interesting in that, because for a decade you probably wouldn't have had to rub shoulders with the venture capital world, I wonder what you actually made of it once you started accepting some of those phone calls from VCs that were clearly interested in Tours by Locals, what you just made of that culture and the way they kind of operate and the things that they would be asking from you and their vision for what, because they obviously have a vision in what Tours by Locals can become. I mean, was there anything that shocked you, surprised you, things you didn't like about that kind of world that you were starting to dip your toes into?
Well, yeah, we got turned down by a number of them because they wanted to write a bigger check than we wanted to take. For us, we're like control freaks, and so the thing that was really important for us is to be able to maintain operational control. We were happy to, we realized that we would be giving up sort of control over the financial aspects of the company, and that was fine. But we really wanted to make sure that we maintained the operational control of the business, and a number of companies, they didn't want that. They wouldn't go down that road. I mean, they would be happy to let you run it until such time as there was, but they could always have the hammer to step in, and so that wasn't a road that we were willing to go down. I guess what surprised me is the level of due diligence that we had to go through. Like they're asking a lot of really difficult questions, and we took even like personality tests, and this it turns out that I'm a very excitable person. Like I'm off the charts when it comes to excitability, and which, well, now I can use that as a it's true, actually. I tend to get really excited. But
tell me, I'm curious about this. I'm glad people don't do personality tests on journalists, that's for sure. But when this was first, when you were told by this particular VC that you would have to take a personality test, did you think, hang on a second, are you joking? Or did you just think, well, we really are getting immersed into a slightly peculiar world here?
There was a little bit of...
Was it like a Myers-Briggs test or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I forget the Hogan assessment, I think it's called.
Okay,
and, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but anyways, and of course you have to pay for this stuff, right? Because like the way these deals work is that the venture capitalist is kind of on the hook for the due diligence process until such time as you actually complete the deal, and then you pay for the market study and the Hogan assessment. I think it cost about $3,500 for the three of us to take that test. So no, that was just like, oh, okay, whatever, And but actually, it turned out to be for me. I like those kind of things, anyways, and it kind of confirmed some of the conceits that I have about my personality. Like, I'm kind of outside the box thinker, and I'm extraordinarily disorganized, and but lots of and this excitability. So
okay.
There you
go. Paul,
David.
So yeah, I wanted to follow up on something you said. You wanted to maintain control, and I'm curious how you thought about controlling a product across so many different cultures, because we talked about France, and I think the French have a different relation with time, in my personal experience living there for a summer, and you had to manage all different types of cultures and tours and enforce quality across what is a pretty broad category. Private tours can be much of anything within that, right? Like, how did you think about how you actually manage the product quality?
Yeah, because that's basically the reason why customers come to Tours by Locals. I mean, originally, I guess we thought that it would kind of sort itself out, sort of like I think kind of Airbnb-ish. Like they let their customers vet the properties. At least it seems to me. Maybe they're changing a little bit now, but the cream rises to the top. But for us, I think the value that we add to to the tours and activities market is to provide that level of consistent expectations. And so that's been a big part of the reason why we've been successful. We have 4,700 guides on our platform right now. But if you sign up as a new tour guide, you're going to get guide number 46,000, I think, is what we're up to. So, there's only about 10% of the people that applied that actually made it through the process and have stuck around. And so they are independent contractors. So, they're not employees. We can't, dictate to them a lot of things that we might like to if they were employees. But we do have our business principles and, that they agree to adhere to. And, certainly showing up on time is like number one. And so actually that has been, we're pretty harsh when it comes down to a guide mismanaging a customer expectation.
So I'm curious, what about just basic cultural differences? Like there are certain cultures that have aggressive demeanors and others that are more passive. And I think this is common on board short excursions off a cruise ship. I remember sometimes someone would be sitting there complaining like, oh, this guy just talks too much, or someone goes, oh, I loved it. And how did you just think about personal preferences?
That's a matter of making sure that the guides understand that the customers are different, and that you have to be a little bit of a savant to read the person that you are meeting. I think one of the things that I have observed is that guides and customers kind of get to know each other through the platform before the tour actually happens. And we provide the guide when they get a new inquiry. They see what the history of the customer is, and now we get a lot of repeat business. So the guide can see the kind of tours that the other customer the customer has taken, the reviews that they've made of other guides, and so they do get the guides do get a sense of who they're dealing with even before the tour starts. So and mostly it seems to me that the guides have enough sense to figure out that if it's a Spanish speaking guest, well, they probably want you to talk from the UK or Germany. Let them enjoy the scenery a little bit, without filling every second with commentary. So, but I don't know. So far, it hasn't seemed to be a problem. We trust our guides. We let them do. That they have their personalities, and people they kind of select them based, I think, on their picture, the video that they have. They read the reviews that other customers have made, and yeah, so it really hasn't seemed to be a particular problem, as long as they hit on those kind of key things, showing up on time, managing it, making sure that all the expectations are taken care of in advance, and they get them back to the ship at least a half hour before departure, if it happens to be a short excursion. So nobody needs that stress. So
no, indeed. So last question for our interview today, Paul. So, and a brief one, really. I mean, you've been with the business for over a decade, and the things you were doing before, and it's actually a fairly long time for a startup and a founder to be with the business for that amount of time. If you weren't doing this, what do you think you would be doing instead? What would be your kind of alternative career, briefly?
Oh, okay. Well, right now, being, I'm of a certain age where I don't feel old, but I'm not young either. So I actually, what my plan is right now is to figure out how to be replaceable at ToursByLocals. Like, I don't want my legacy. I want to be able to have the opportunity to ride off into the sunset and know that the company is in good hands. I don't think we're quite there yet, and of course, right now wouldn't be the time to leave. But that's where I want to get back to. And I mean, as an alternative career, don't really have any. My alternative career is to kind of have my country place overlooking the ocean, and where I'm, that it's retirement basically. That's the end goal at this point.
Okay.
But there's no particular time frame for that, and I just want to make sure that we built a strong enough company that, and I've been clever enough to hire much smarter and better people than me, so that I can leave it in good hands when the time comes.
Okay, well, we wish you well with that. I think we're all looking forward to retiring at some point. And David's got about another 50 years ahead of him. He's so young.
Exactly.
But no, thank you very much, Paul, for joining us as our guest this week on How I Got Here. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Indeed. Yes.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay, so you've been listening to another episode of How I Got Here. This is Mozio and PhocusWire's weekly podcast where we interview the innovators and entrepreneurs in travel and tourism. We always say this, but it's good to go do it again. You can find us, if you're not a subscriber already, on all the usual platforms, iTunes, Google Podcasts and Spotify. Leave us a review, leave us some feedback, give us a high rating, please. From David and I, thanks to you again, Paul, and we'll see you next time.
Great. Take care.
Thanks for listening to How I Got Here podcast. We'll be back next week with more insight stories behind startups and innovation in travel and transportation. Check mozio.com/move for a complete write-up of the highlights of every podcast with translations into 5 languages, and get your daily dose of news on the digital travel economy by subscribing to the newsletter at PhocusWire.com. See you next week.